Okay, good morning everyone. On this lovely Wednesday morning, where I hope it was where you are. It's a bit cloudy for me here, down in good old Bristol. But thank you for joining us today for our second session in our Microsoft Education Bootcamp, Microsoft Cloud Bootcamp for Education series. For those of you that joined the first session and now joining this one, thanks for coming along on this journey with us. We realise there may be some of you that are new to this session today, which is session 2, which is focused on modernisation. I won't go into too much detail about what the modernisation bit means. I'll leave that to Leon when I introduce him as our speaker for today. But throughout the purpose of this call, we kind of set this up as a means for people to come together, not like a normal webinar, just to kind of listen into what Leon is speaking about in this call, what Microsoft may add value to the call as well, who are on the call today that you might see. I don't know whether you want to give it a wave. They're waiting behind the scenes to help answer any of your questions, but the kind of purpose was for you guys to kind of ask some questions that you may have about anything cloud related. Luckily for you guys, we've got Leon Godwin, who's our speaker on the call today, who the only way to put it is he's an absolute expert in cloud technology. And lucky for you guys, he seems to know everything there is about AI as well. We won't dive into too much in AI in this call because that's for session 3, but please feel free to kind of ask any sort of questions that you do have. We'd be happy to chat with you about it and happy to hear them. As this is a Teams call, throughout the presentation, at any point, if you want to, you've got the option to raise your hand at the button at the top, and we'll call on you. You can come off mute and ask your question live, but there's no kind of pressure to do so, and there's no pressure to kind of sit there with your camera on as well. If you don't want to come off mute and ask a question, just feel free to put it in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we can answer it that way. Throughout the call, there will be some opportunities to answer some polls and some open-ended questions, just to kind of help us understand where you are as an organisation and kind of what you're looking for and want to achieve. So if you've got a phone, you'll have the QR code on the screen where you can answer the form there, or I'll be sharing the link to the forms. So if you're on desktop, you can open it that way as well. So next slide, please, Leon. So for those of you that joined the first call, I'm not going to do a massive spiel again. It's about who we are at Cloud Direct. But we are becoming one of the top 1% Microsoft partners globally. And much like our mascot, Eric, who is a hedgehog, he's known for doing one thing brilliantly, which is kind of curling up into a ball to escape from predators. We kind of took that ethos as part of our business and thought, let's take that because we deliver one thing and do one good thing only, which is everything to do with Microsoft technology and helping to support our customers. And we have a whole host of solution certifications to kind of back that up and show what we do. And we help to deliver fast, secure cloud solutions that can, fingers crossed, help to transform and fortify your business, or in this case, as yourselves in educational organizations. Next slide, please, Leon. On the call today, as I mentioned earlier, there's a whole host of people that are here, both from Microsoft account execs, who some of you may recognize, and we've got some data and AI inference data specialists as well from Microsoft, as well as Leon, who's presenting today, and some other people from Cloud Direct, who you may hear from post-call further on down the line. But realistically, we're here as part of this call. As I mentioned, if you do have any questions, we really like to hear from you, whether it's about what trends or challenges that you're facing in your business that we can help you with, what priorities you're looking for, what your kind of roadmap looks like as an education organisation when it comes to cloud technology. We'd be happy to hear it. Just let us know in this call, and we'd love to help answer those questions for you. So without further ado, that's enough from me. So I'm going to hand over to Leon, who's our Cloud Evangelist at Cloud Direct, who's going to take you through our presentation today. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Much appreciated. So like Adam said, I'm the principal cloud evangelist. I don't work in sales. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I'm fanatical about helping people accelerate their cloud journey. That can be colleagues, prospects, customers. Doesn't matter. And I'm a free of charge resource. And as been mentioned, I've probably built it and broke it in every cloud. And I'm very passionate about how AI can help organizations, and modernization is a critical step on that journey. So I'm hoping you'll find this session interesting. There will be some questions. So we will be sharing QR codes, and simultaneously within the chat, we'll show you the link to some Microsoft forms where we'll ask you some questions. And like Adam said, if you've got any questions, please, we're all here to help you. So if you've got any questions, make use of the abundant talent we have available for you today. Okay, so broadly, when we look at the journey to AI, we see that in some logical steps. We've put together these kind of 7 steps. So much like if you wanted to have your car MOT'd, they don't come to you. You take your car to where the expertise is. If you are looking to modernize and use the world's leading AI technologies, then Azure is the place to be. And so you would migrate to the cloud. You want to optimize your use of that cloud so you're not overspending whilst simultaneously making sure you're delivering the performance and security that you need in the cloud. And we will be looking at the modernization of data and applications in this session, as well as the data that surrounds that. There will, in session 3, we'll cover off the broader analytics and from the data side of things, as well as AI, and I will also be joining in with that session. So in session 1, for those of you that didn't make it, it will be available to go and watch online, but we discussed migrating to the cloud, how you optimize and that security from those first 3 steps. One of the key benefits, Microsoft offer plentiful funding for organizations looking to adopt the cloud. And we'll touch on funding a little bit later as it relates to optimization. So as I said, I'm going to focus on the modernization in the cloud. I should note that I'm currently located in the Philippines. I'm doing some volunteer work for some schools over here, and I do apologize if the connection isn't ideal. I am on an island, and the comms are as best as I can get them. Okay, so let's go with the first question. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind sharing that link in the chat for those that don't have a phone to hand, but if you do have a phone to hand, there is the QR code on the screen. And the question, and I'll give you guys a few seconds to go and complete that, but if you click on the link, let the forms load, you should just have a question. What is your experience of application modernization? Have you had any of that experience, or are you familiar with it? Is this maybe you've got minimal experience, or you don't even know what it is, and that's absolutely fine. So we're seeing some responses come through, and the trend seems to be some experience. Okay, that's very interesting. So let's jump on the general. So what is application modernization? Yeah, we will get onto that very much so. Okay, so modernization in its broadest sense is about bringing your organization to a point where it can make best use of available technologies. It isn't just about technology, though. It covers people, process, and technology. So this could be something as simple as I have a infrastructure as a service, a server with SQL Server on it, and I want to take advantage of Azure SQL and move up the cloud stack, or I want to utilize, I've got a website or a web app that instead of delivering it using a Windows server with IIS, for example, you might deliver that as a web app under a sort of platform as a service model. These platform as a service, as a general rule of thumb, platform as a service where you can, infrastructure as a service where you have to. Generally speaking, the cost efficiencies are much greater in platform as a service, and I would strongly encourage people that are looking to either adopt the cloud in their first step to include PaaS within that target operating model, or indeed to those that it's very common for people to have VM on-prem, and they would then migrate those to infrastructure as a service within Azure. But there are multitudes of benefits by actually moving further up the cloud stack, both in terms of cost, availability, and in fact, I think we're going to touch on that in this slide, where having that scalability, there are many advantages with modernization that relate to delivering better performance and scalability, and quite often in a more cost-effective way than in a traditional infrastructure as a service method. That means that you can go and save and reduce your costs. And I know many, many organizations who've made the move from infrastructure as a service on Azure up to moving a number of their systems to platform as a service, which results in a net saving just by making that move. And they're getting a better quality service as a result of it. So what is modernization? It's about better, it's about faster, it's about cheaper, and it's ticking at least one of those boxes, and then it's an activity that's worth doing. Moving up the cloud stack can also give some advantages when it comes to security. Microsoft have quadrupled their security investment in recent years than the previous 5 years, and as such there are a multitude of features that are available to you further up that cloud stack, and then up that cloud stack are services like AI. So I didn't know how to code at all. It was a decision I made early on in my career, and for better or for worse, that was the decision I made, but it's turned out to be a good decision right now, because I have written probably in the last fortnight, maybe over a dozen different AI-powered applications, all written from code, but I get AI to write the code for me. I get AI to go and deploy the application to Azure for me, and I can't read a line of it. But I don't need to. I just need to know how to wield modern technology like AI and bend it to my will. And then we're also looking at the ability to be able to collaborate. For example, I'm in the Philippines right now. I helped develop this deck from the other side of the world. And there are many services up the cloud stack that have a sort of capability to be able to democratize and socialize information, applications, and data to a wider audience, which can be particularly useful in education with people who aren't necessarily going to be completely centric to the classroom. So some of the benefits, I'm not going to read all these out, but some of the benefits that we might look at is moving up the cloud stack, generally speaking, is it's greener, and it can help meet sustainability objectives. Rather than running a VM, which will consume a certain amount of horsepower, generally speaking, platform as a service tends to be more sustainable and helped by a reduction in the amount of physical infrastructure required to go and run it. Moving up that cloud stack presents the opportunity to start exploiting in a more meaningful way the modern technologies that are available in the data, AI, Kubernetes, serverless. There's a whole suite of things. I'm not going to focus too much on technologies. We can have, if you're interested in having that conversation around technologies, as I said at the top of this call, I am a free of charge resource, and I'm happy to have sessions with you where you can bring your specific business context. But if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. Adam will let me know, and one of us on this call, I'm sure, will be able to help. So when I look at education institutions, I put this slide together, just actually this slide had about 70 line items, so I cherry picked ones I thought that might be the most useful. Some examples of how education institutions are modernising in the cloud. And some of those could be about the integration with specific tools like Blackboard or learning management systems. Using that integration that's available with Azure, that single sign-on, providing that streamlined access to educational content. It can also be, you could build a solution that helps identify at-risk students to allow for positive interventions using predictive analytics. You could also use automated enrollment systems to help people enroll. This could be whether you're universities or schools. You can go and assist with that through streamlined business process automation tools such as that available in Power Platform. The vast majority of you in this call will have, if not all of you, will already have access as part of your Microsoft 365 license, access to Power Platform. Yes, there are some premium features that you might not have access to, but the breadth of the solution at a baseline you will have access to, and you can start exploiting that. It's probably one of the features that you have that you're not making good use of. I built, last week, I built a solution for an organization that used Power Automate to automate using AI to go and extract information from invoices, to go and do reconciliation, to go in a Power App to capture additional information to help that invoice process workflow to continue, an authorization workflow, and then ultimately Power Automate Desktop to go and implement that into a solution and into a legacy application. So when it comes from your perspectives, what would you guys say is your primary driver for modernizing your applications in the cloud? And if I just scroll down, you have other at the bottom there. So I'll just give everyone a moment to start responding to that. Sometimes it's, I was going to say, sometimes it happens that the responses don't come through live terribly well. So there is an appetite for increased agility, enhanced security, and improving performance. That's actually quite surprising, some of these metrics, because the one that I thought would jump out would be the innovation side of things, would have been an area that would have been towards the top of the list. So that's surprising to me. And actually, I wouldn't mind opening this up, given this data footprint that we're seeing here from the audience. If I can ask my Microsoft colleagues, what are they seeing as being the primary drivers? Because you guys all work in that education sector within Microsoft. What do you guys see as being the drivers for the organizations that you're engaging with?
Hi, Leon. From my side, I am seeing it a lot around cost and innovation from experience. So, yeah, I understand a lot of people have pressure to meet the demands and the metrics that are required from the organization above them. Everybody has bosses, and everybody needs a valid business plan to create that piece and innovate correctly. So, yeah, that's where we can hopefully help in that regard in terms of mapping out what that 18-month timeline would look like, or whatever you're being mandated to do. Seems to be the general route of passage for most people I'm speaking to. How can we map out the cost, but how can we do it correctly at the foundations in place? So yeah, I would say innovation and cost savings. I don't know if that's the same in the audience here.
From my side, I think I agree with what you guys are saying around increased agility and scalability is also something that most of our customers in this sector are talking about, because the access to application is huge in terms of, for example, if you're running an application for students or your teachers, the scalability is very important for it, and the agility to hold that application is very important. So that is what I'm hearing. And obviously, there then comes the innovation side to it. How can they fasten the use of the application? How can they innovate it better for ease of access for their users? So that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it's good to get these sort of collective viewpoints because people in the audience, they're seeing things through the lens of their institution and organizations. And obviously from Microsoft, you have a more holistic view covering many more sort of organizations. So when we look at modernization, I don't look at it just from a technology standpoint. I look at it from both a people, process, and technology. So that could be delivering a cloud center of excellence in your organization so you can innovate and follow best practice. It could be that you're looking to improve a business process within your organization, and process automation and process re-engineering is like a really key part of being able to do things more efficiently. And Microsoft have a number of tools that can support that process objective. So whether you're looking to elevate from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service, or adopting new technology, there's a whole suite of things that can sit under the technology. And I'm going to touch on a few of those now. So on the people side of things, what we see more and more is for those organizations that want to exploit a modernization route, whether that be for cost optimization or whether it be for achieving greater agility, to be able to exploit their data assets to deliver more institutional value. A lot of that comes from a process of adopting DevOps from the people perspective, so they are capable. Gone are the days for modernization where it would be a third line support person that would traditionally feed and water and keep the lights on server infrastructure. The roles have changed, and a good example of that is the DevOps process, where people can ideate around the business value of change, put together the components and deliver against that. So from a DevOps perspective, if you were looking to go down the modernization route, it's certainly a question that's worth asking to say, is this a route I want to go down? Whether you start with, and the discipline would focus on the starting of the project and what's the needs of the organization, what are the specific drivers, and capturing those in a sensible, cohesive way. Because now you are representatives of the organization. You're not just people that are keeping the lights on within IT. You're actually looking to help modernize your organization, and then putting that plan together, controlling how you work, and tracking the progress of that work. And Microsoft have a number of tools within that space, and there's lots of third-party tools that help you develop and test your plans and projects. And then as we move forward, we look at other strings, which is one of the elements, and I kind of hinted at it earlier on with my lack of coding knowledge. I mean, .NET for me is the end of my email address. I really can't write a line of code. But like I say, I'm writing lots and lots of code, or I'm getting AI to do it for me, and consequently creating really, really powerful apps for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And this audience probably knows much better than I do when it comes to writing code, for example, or you have people in your organization who are far more proficient than I am. And so if I'm creating these wonderful modern capabilities, imagine what you can do with the right support and tool set around you. And then moving forward, having written your applications in code, you would look to go and test that and deploy that, and having the structure in place. So we have a concept in Azure of a landing zone. These are environments in which a set of rules and policies and the components that allow you to scale out within a feature of that may be a testing and development environment. that allows you to deploy applications. So getting that structure in place is something that we can help you with in a meaningful way to say, right, we can build out a landing zone that will allow you to modernize and innovate. Oops. And then ultimately, we want to be able to manage and maintain what we're doing. And we want to do that in a way where we can update our systems based on feedback, and we can iterate. One of the great things about cloud is traditionally the model has been you buy a commercial off-the-shelf applications, you go to Capita and you buy Sims, or you use a government supplied pupil system, and its functionality is whatever that provider has says it is. Whereas within when you bring these things within your control, you can develop and iterate as legislation changes, as your institutions' needs change, as curriculums change, as your data footprint changes, so might your need to go and iterate upon your applications. And it has never been so easy as to do that as it is now with the capability of AI. I use GitHub for, I have Copilot for GitHub to go and help me write and deploy my applications in Azure, again, with the backdrop of not knowing that. It's become really, really easy. And if it's easy for me today, imagine what it will be like tomorrow, because that pace of innovation that's taking place within Azure is astronomical. So DevOps is about the process of planning how you're going to deliver business value, having a routine to develop and test, and then release those elements and iterate on them to deliver better and better outcomes aligned with that particular objective. And speaking of alignment, ask yourself these questions. If I want to modernize, what is it I want to modernize? Is it a process that I want to modernize? Is it some kind of automation that I'd like to put in place? Am I effectively looking at delivering efficiency, effectiveness, and agility as part of that business change? Because no longer are IT about keeping the lights on, as I mentioned before. You are the harbingers of delivering meaningful business value. And likewise, you can then, and these are just, there are many that can be on this list, but in the interest of space, I've just said database modernization or application modernization. There are many different strategies you might adopt to deliver and enhance the capabilities of your workloads that you deploy on Azure. And then you might consider the best practice routines of how to do that. And this is where we and Microsoft come together. You have the well-architected framework and the cloud adoption framework. These are tools that are available to you. We can supply you links. We as expert MSPs, we build everything we do aligning with this best practice, so we can deliver the outcomes that you need in a best practice fashion. Likewise with security, enhancing your security posture. Threats have never been greater than they are now, and unfortunately, it's going to be worse tomorrow. And so having a footprint and a capability and a posture that is not static, you know, the traditional commercial paradigm of technology, you know, on-prem was you'd buy a piece of hardware, you'd sweat it for a number of years, and then you'd look to go and reinvest. So your innovation and your response to security was effectively kind of, I would say, on a 5-year procurement cycle, where with its breadth of capability that is constantly improving, and indeed the marketplace, you're just a few mouse clicks away from delivering a greater and enhanced security posture. And so when it comes to meaningful change and actions, like if anybody on this call is interested in saying, I have a business process that I would like to make more efficient. I would like to look at delivering greater cost savings by moving further up the cloud stack and adopting different services, then you want to do that in a structured way. Part of that would be reach out to us and we would put together a meaningful concrete plan with a statement of works that shows you the journey of where you are and where you want to get to and the steps in between. We can also look at funding, which I'll touch on in a bit. But likewise, internally, the paradigm of sort of controlling projects, we need to show a little bit more rigor in how we do things. So here, if you are wanting to deliver some kind of organizational change, put together a business case. These are just some of the examples within that you might put together in terms of that rigor and that structure. You know, what are the benefits going to be? What are the costs? How are you justifying the risk-reward equation? Provide a detailed description of the project. What are the risks and what are the project schedules? Put these things together as a matter of course. I know in education, my brother works in an educational institution, and that change from being an organisation, so an IT department that keeps the lights on, to those that actually become the enablers of modernisation and change, requires a slight change in practices, and putting together these business plans is part of that. You might look on another technology set to go and use Power Platform. I'm a huge fan of Power Platform because the time to deliver business value is incredibly short. You all have access to it today. You can go to make.microsoft.com and you can start using Power Platform and its tools immediately after this call. And it could be something really noddy and simple to just sort of try it on for size. Like every time an email arrives with an attachment, go and save a copy of that to my OneDrive. A tiny little micro bit of a process. But as you get more sophisticated, you can start doing more and more clever things like providing applications that you can customize. And you can do that yourselves. You have those licenses today, and you can start delivering these applications, and you can make them available in Microsoft Teams and publish them so lots of people have access to them. So working through these tool sets and understanding how you can automate business processes with the tools that you already have today is really important. So just before I go a little further, can I ask my Microsoft colleagues, are you seeing the adoption of Microsoft Power Platform taking place within the education sector?
Apologies, my mute wasn't working. I would say it's yeah, very much encouraged. I would probably leave that to one of my colleagues in Power Platform, but from an infra perspective, infra and Azure perspective, yeah, generally we can tie in those project timelines to suit the modernization plan within infra, and like dovetail that with the Power Platform piece. So I am seeing it come into effect, but statistics and actual percentage of the application, we can come back on that piece. Unless there's anyone else from my side, particularly on the power piece, that's looking in conjunction with me.
One of the things I'm seeing on the Power Platform side of things is because it's a license that most people have as a byproduct of having 365, it's empowering people within an organization and institutions to adopt those, which can create a culture of innovation. And I think it's a really good, whether it be something like Copilot for 365 or Power Platform adjacent to 365, having these tools to work in more modern, agile ways can create that kind of culture of innovation. And then when you reach the sort of limits of these tool sets, you've got the whole Azure platform, and I see it as very much a sort of incremental growth from sort of Power Platform to the more sophisticated capabilities that you have, and the much larger and scalable capabilities that exist in Azure. And I see it as an interesting sort of gateway to modernization in Azure. One of the
Leon,
sure.
just to add there, We're definitely seeing more and more use of Power Platform in the education sector, especially in multi-academy trusts and college groups, thinking about how to automate some of the very mundane and manual processes, especially when it comes to things like HR and finance, some of the processes that our organizations go through on a daily basis, and using low code to basically automate it. And we have some really interesting cases where, speaking of cost savings that Stuart covered earlier on, we've seen some really exciting cases where educational organizations were able to make significant cost savings by automating these manual processes.
Yeah, I'm seeing something similar. I was at an event. I can't remember where it was. I think it was Leeds University. But what they did was you'd have these freshers starting, and they built a power app that would provide all the mapping and location information, so they knew how to get around. It would provide calendars for people to for various events to help them sort of on board as sort of new starters at university, and provided buddy systems and partner systems all within an app, just to help that, let's call it customer experience, that student experience from day one. So whilst that may not be specifically about driving cost savings, this was about delivering a much better experience for those new starters. So I'm seeing it more and more in education, and because the barrier to entry is so incredibly low, I find it to be a really compelling way of people to start a culture within their organisation of modernisation. And I've alluded to this earlier on. I've done this a few times for a few organizations where they would have using Power Platform to automate and modernize. I'm giving this as an example using Power Platform. Now, as we go forward, you would actually want to use Azure for a lot of these things when you get to a certain scale. But you can do things like an invoice arrives, I will save it to a specific location. That triggers an automation, an AI builder, for example, which has this kind of AI forms recognition capability. Think of it like an AI-powered optical character recognition. Slightly murdered that analogy, but it'll do. That extracts the information out of that invoice and stores it as digital data. And then to move that invoice, it needed to be embellished with, that invoice needed to be assigned to project numbers. Different, the accounts team didn't know that. It had to go to a different department. So a custom app is created to allow people to say that cost is for project 1, 2, and 3, and then more automation then apportions those costs accordingly and that invoice to those projects. And because their legacy application was a desktop application, it wasn't like a Dynamics and a modern application, it was a legacy application. Power Automate Desktop was then used to go and import all that data. So this particular organization was processing north of 300 invoices a week, and they were looking to double in size as a result of some large contracts that they've won. A byproduct of this was they actually needed far less staff, and when they did double in size, they didn't need to expand those teams because that automation's taking care of it. So the ROI for this was incredibly short. And most of these licenses you already have today, with the exception of the AI builder, which is this digital extraction. You could just buy credits to go and extract that data. So you already have the licenses. You could be doing this and delivering automation and modernizing within your organizations, and you have the tools that you need today. And that's just an example. And whilst I don't want to push the Power Platform as being the answer to all your problems, because that's certainly not what I want in position, it's something that as individuals you should start to go and explore the potential value there, because you can then appreciate the value that Azure will have to offer in those spaces by, instead of storing invoices in SharePoint, maybe a database would be more appropriate. Instead of using a specific flow, maybe using Azure Functions or Logic apps, which are capabilities within Azure, would be better suited. Maybe a web app would be a better thing than a Power App to go and deliver these capabilities. So there's lots of different ways that you can go and start exploiting modernization and automation. So this is an open-ended question, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to go and answer this one. So do you have any concerns about modernizing your applications or your data in the cloud environment? This is an open-ended, so it's not a multiple choice. So I'm going to give you guys a few moments to go and complete that. Actually, whilst you guys, the audience, are completing that, can I ask Microsoft, what do you see as being any barriers or concerns to organizations that would like to modernize but are finding specific obstacles? What do you see?
I would like to add here. So the barriers would be the lack of resources that I've seen. They do not have a big IT team that can help do the modernization, and budgets, of course, is also a big challenge. They always need help from a third party to get things done. So I think that's what I've noticed in my conversations.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think I've got a slide coming up in a moment. Priorities, too busy, cost, speed. Okay, so this word cloud is sort of populating and very much resonating with what you just said. So one of the things what we do have at our disposal in that regard is our relationship to Cloud Direct with Microsoft. Is Microsoft provide funding pathways to deliver to enable you to mitigate and minimize the cost of modernization, and then you have an expert like ourselves go and deliver that change. So Microsoft are funding us to go and deliver the work for you, so you don't necessarily have you don't actually have the depth of resource and knowledge and experience to do it, but we do. We can go and do that. And I'm just seeing another update. So supplier invoices, I've obviously touched on that one there as a plethora of capability where you could modernize that vendor product. I wonder what that means. Is that a particular product that wouldn't be compatible with the cloud that you might need to go and re-architect? That's an interesting one. I wouldn't mind exploring a bit more. Cost and
Hi,
speed.
Leon.
Hi.
If you click on all responses, you should be able to see exactly what they are instead of in the word cloud. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Loss of control over data. So that's a really interesting one. And it can be a bit of a misnomer as well. I'm going to touch on that in a bit. But if you've got any specific, if you'd like a specific follow-up session with me to go and deep dive into that, I'd be more than happy to do it, because I'm going to be touching on data in a moment. But the capabilities to be able to protect your data in the cloud and what Microsoft have on offer is particularly advanced when it comes to that sort of governance and control and visibility of your data. And so I suspect I can assuage you of any concerns within that particular space. Yes, I can't. So it's based on Microsoft examples, citing he's locked into the vendor product example. Okay, so that's an interesting one where we're talking about vendor lock-in here, and that's a perfect example of modernization. So I sort of mentioned it earlier on, where something is prescribed with a fixed set of functionality that you have procured. If you wanted to bring that in-house with something you want to develop to make it more relevant to your organization that allows you to develop and control it, that is something that potentially you could do if you were looking to go and effectively architect your own solution. That's one of the pathways that you might have. It may be that particular application isn't anything that's likely to change. I'm thinking of Capita Sims or some other a system where you have it, it's mandated, you use it, and it's not going to change. Moving existing applications there is a technique and process and a best practice for doing that. We are massively experienced in that, and that is, whilst not, in my experience, not every application, but 5% of applications tend to be retained on site and they don't move. There is a larger portion that move either to SaaS products, so maybe finance will move to Dynamics, or file servers will move to SharePoint or OneDrive, or you may take your infrastructure as a service and move that to infrastructure or platform as a service within Azure. And doing that assessment and putting together a statement of works that says, okay, what have we got? Let's go and run an assessment and let's make a recommendation based on the understanding of these applications and their capabilities and their dependencies. What is the best way for them to move if they should move? And we've got lots and lots and lots of experience doing exactly that. And on that note, if we look here, these verticals are all the different funding pathways that Microsoft put together to help organizations adopt and achieve more with the cloud. So there is the Azure Migrate, so that'd be relevant to one of those questions we were just looking at, where we can put together a workshop and do that discovery exercise to understand what you need. We would build a statement of works and we would build out your landing zone, that best practice approach for handling scale and compliance and control within your organization. If relevant, a proof of concept or a pilot, putting that design together and achieving that migration. Microsoft or Cloud Direct will fund a large part of that. Likewise, you'll notice the other vertical that's also got a lot of yellow blocks of funding from Microsoft is also the app modernization. So if you've got on-premise and you're looking to say, right, I want to look at modernizing in the cloud, what funding pathways are available to us? Reach out to us. One of our experts will look at your needs and we can put together a concrete plan of action that will describe how you get from point A to point B, what the cost of it will be, and how much Microsoft will be able to apply funding to that particular challenge. I also just want to stress, Microsoft have put more money. There is, I'm trying to do this without using technical language. Microsoft have a pot of money, and they've put more money in that pot of money for these funding opportunities. There is a vast amount of opportunity. We have secured more funding, and I believe we're third in Europe and first in the UK for the amount of funding that we've secured for customers to deliver cloud change within their environment. I would strongly encourage you to put together a meaningful engagement to deliver business change associated with funding, and we can help you every step of the way with that. So if, just in conclusion, when it looks to the steps that you might take, oh, and by the way, if it's on my hard drive, you're welcome to these slides. And I believe Jessica's going to share her email address so she can go and share these slides with you afterwards, should you be interested. But start off with a structure. Put together your objectives. Why are you doing it? If it's going to do something better, faster, cheaper, then you should be able to articulate that with a clearly defined set of objectives. Put together your an assessment of your application so you understand what your current position is. Much like a GPS or a sat nav, you need to know where you're going, and you also need to know where you are to be able to plot the route. We would do exactly the same thing by understanding where you are with that assessment. We would help define with you the appropriate modernization strategy. We'd look to go and utilize cloud native capabilities. And I think I might just pause there for a second and ask our Microsoft colleagues about some of the more popular cloud native technologies that are being used in the education sector, if you don't mind.
Hi, excuse me. So I'm seeing a lot of security focused workloads that are being presented into Defender is obviously a really big part of our suite now, and it's been encouraged and adopted wholesale. The SQL moves across, managing that workload, Azure Arc, modernizing ahead if you want to do a migration and you want to modernize your app infrastructure, that you're looking to secure that piece, and building out the foundational workloads for the AI and data piece. There's a lot to go after, but there's also a lot of real uptake in developing those foundational workload protection across your SQL estate, for example, and yeah, it's really gathering a lot of traction now, particularly around the workshop piece, when you can articulate that out pretty quickly, and then get that roadmap in, and then once you've kind of built out that robust landing zone piece is what I'm seeing, that really leads to just spinning up those workloads really quickly and really effectively. So that's where I'm seeing a lot in the foundational work and protecting that SQL infrastructure and Win server change. That's mainly what I've seen across the board.
Yeah, that Arc is a really good point, because Arc effectively extends that cloud control plane to the on-premise. So you can start enjoying the benefits of cloud prior to any migration. And that helps with that whole modernization strategy by, for some organizations, starting off with Arc is a really good point. I agree around the Defender side of things. I am seeing a massive uptake in organizations that are looking to become, to achieve Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. And those organizations are leaning heavily on the technology stack of things like Defender to help both mitigate and identify risks. I'm seeing something very similar. And speaking of that, prioritizing security. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just wanted to add from my end as well. I totally agree on the ARC piece and modernizing the foundation in order to achieve your goals on data and AI. So all the customers are talking about modernizing their applications using the integration services or Kubernetes services. How can they scale these applications? And again, using the AI to automate these applications and reduce the workload of your team. So I think a lot of technologies in combination are giving success. It's not just one technology. It's a combination of all the suite of resources that we have in Microsoft to offer to achieve that goal.
Yeah. And on the security thing, it's, the traditional paradigm was, I've got a firewall, so I'm safe. Whereas really the perimeter of a network now is not your firewall, it's your identity. And having these suite of tools, it's about trying to stop people getting out, identifying if they have got in, having a recovery strategy in place to be able to recover in a modern and agile way should they get it. So yeah, I completely agree with that. It isn't a single thread. These things work in concert with each other. So moving on to data, I'm conscious I spent quite a lot of time on modernization, so I'm going to sort of speed through some of these elements. But like I say, if you want to have one-to-ones on any of these subjects, that is what we are here for. So when it comes to data is something I am seeing as being the main driver that is causing organizations to change. And much like those that many organizations are looking to use AI and to deliver benefits, and AI is an engine, and that engine needs fuel, and that fuel is data, and that data needs to be compliant, of quality, and in fact, using Power Platform, I built a data quality assessment demo where I defined the 6 pillars of data quality and gave that to an AI, and would pass it a data set and ask it to assess it and score it based on those 6 pillars of quality, timeliness, uniqueness, etc., etc. So can I ask the audience, what organizational outcomes would you like to achieve over the next year with your data and by architecture? Okay, so Power BI is that's an excellent example. So if you've got there's a process that you need to follow when it comes to good data practices. It would start off by having a useful platform to be able to handle both the governance, the transformation, the connectivity, the automation, the analytics, if that's appropriate, machine learning, if that's appropriate, the automation off the back of the state of that data, as well as the visualizations of that data. So Power BI sits within that visualization step of data. Copilot for Power BI, it's probably my second favorite Copilot. The GitHub one being my favorite, just because it lets me show off more. But to have a two-way conversation with your data where you ask a question in textual format, what was driving a downturn in grades, what was driving a downturn in sales, whatever it may be, and then to have that reply come back using a visual medium in terms of dashboards and charts that allow you to drill down, that can be incredibly powerful. So being able to connect to your data, to more data, to be able to drive a holistic view of your data, incredibly powerful. I've got a whole presentation that I can give in that data space to drill down into that more meaningfully. Implement Copilot. I actually have a Copilot example at the end of this slide. It's actually not in the context of positioning what we can do for you, but more sort of reinforcing how we actually apply the same principles I'm just about to relay to you to our own products and services, but you'll probably find it interesting. And replicate our on-premise functionality and expand upon it to make data more readily available across the organization. Really good answer. I really like whoever put that in there. That's a really good use case and absolutely something that we can help with, and Azure is massively geared up to addressing that particular need. So yeah, I'd be very interested in having more conversations with you about that. And let me just flip on to the next slide. So within the education sector, there are a number of existing data sets that are unique to education, whether it be the higher education statistics, the individual learning records, the pupil databases. These are things that apply in education that don't apply in other organizations, but you also have all the invoices that you need to pay. You have HR onboarding, offboarding activities that every organization has. So you have all those business processes that, if you like, are generic and apply to every organization, but you have some unique data sets as well. And so defining a data strategy of how you're going to go and use that data, whether it be to be connecting more data to your infrastructure or making it more available, that should form part of a data strategy. So putting that strategy together in a meaningful, concrete way that says, right, what is it I want to do? What is my vision and what is my objective? And documenting that to say, this is my long-term objective with data. If you want to have a conversation about that because you're at the ideation stage where you want to know the art of the possible, again, we have our own data practice. Dr. Victoria Holt, who's going to be on our third session of this series, she heads up that practice and she can help you with that, or indeed I can as well. Having the right data governance in place, as well as the right architecture, being able to manage that data, perform analytics or visualizations of that data, ensuring security, promoting a culture, and this is kind of a step that's missed, and I think someone kind of alluded to it with that connecting more data or making data more available. That is traditionally, we've treated data in silos, and we've done that for security reasons. But if you can apply security across the board for all your data, then actually treating it as silo might not actually be the right thing to do. And if you can deliver access where appropriate to more of that data, you can deliver greater value to your the people that would like to consume that data. Put together a data strategy, and again, align it ultimately with the outcomes you're looking to, or the organization is looking to achieve. So it's about maximizing business value, making better decision making, making sure when you create a presentation you put the spacing correct on the slide, resource optimization, enhanced collaboration, increased agility, and risk and compliance. What are your organization's objectives in these areas, and how will you achieve it with your particular project? So we have another question for the audience here, which is, how confident are you in your data strategy to achieve your educational organization's goals? I'll give you a moment to touch on that. Be a bit of a lag sometimes, and sometimes these metrics don't come through. I suspect it might be to do with my geography. Oh, they've just pinged through. Okay, somewhat quite. Okay, so that is quite a blend. So we're looking at somewhat more. So it looks like there's room for improvement here when it comes to your data strategy and its alignment with overall organization goals. And that's something that I think these next couple of slides will be able to help you with. So it starts with a modern analytics platform, a modern data platform, that where you can apply governance, you can go and assess for quality, you can create your dashboards, and you can integrate generative AI should you need to. Microsoft have a number of standalone products that have been sort of put together into a suite of products and are being developed under that suite now, which is Microsoft Fabric, which is a very, very, very capable platform to be able to. It comes with lots of pre-built connectors. So the person who said that they would like to connect to more data sources, there are a whole bunch of data sources and pre-built connectors that allow you to attach to data. That data doesn't have to be in Azure. It could be in AWS, it could be on-prem, it could be in a SaaS platform. And there are a whole bunch of pre-existing connectors to allow you to connect to data, or you can create your own. Having the ability, and we will look at governance and data governance a little bit more in our third session, but putting together the ownership and stewardship of your data, having those controls and that visibility in place is a key component, especially if you're going to use and start adopting that data and exploiting it in new and modern ways. Data quality is an interesting one. I gave you that example earlier on of a little Power App I built that I defined the rules, gave a data set to an AI with these rules, and it would then score the data for quality against 6 pillars of quality. And so uniqueness was one. So what do I do when I have duplicate records? Does that matter? Actually, in some scenarios, it might not matter. In other scenarios, it would very much matter. In financial transactions, it probably matters a lot. But in terms of just overall training of some other system, maybe it doesn't matter. So having an understanding of your data quality allows you to make deterministic decisions to say, okay, I need to go and address this, or I need to go and drop this data for this particular use case. And that's where we get into a medallion architecture, which I'll come on to shortly. So when it comes to modernization, when it comes to modernizing your data, do an assessment of your data. So what is the current state of your data? Is it migrated to the cloud? You can still do the assessment if you're already in Azure, because we're looking at the state of your data. It doesn't have to be in Azure for certain use cases, but generally speaking, migrating your data to the cloud will deliver a lot of value. Ensure that as part of your assessment, you're assessing the security of your data and how your data is organized. Is certain data classified in some way? Is data democratized or not democratized? Who should have access to that data? how will that data allow you to make data-driven decisions? And I think I'll give you an example in a moment. And especially in the AI space, if you're looking to use AI, ethics is going to be a component of that. So if I just look at a strategic roadmap example, this is something I've knocked up as an example, but let's say you've got some systems with student data and you store that in the cloud. You then look at the data ingestion and management technologies that are available in Azure to go and manage that data more effectively. And then maybe you want to layer on an enhancement to that foundational capability to deliver some kind of chat interface to allow you to chat with your data. We've just mentioned Copilot for Power BI as an example of that, but there are many more. Then maybe you layer on other data sets, finance data, IT data. These data sets can be varied and unique to every organization, but you start pulling and connecting these other data sets in various locations, and ultimately that might allow you to tick your data strategic goal of having a 360-degree view of your students. Maybe you want to drive deeper and go and do some analytics against all those data holistically, not as an individual silo, because there are relationships between these data, even if they're not immediately obvious. You know, having students costs money. Having students has an impact on IT. And there are relationships between these data that aren't necessarily readily available, except they are to analytics. So then you might want to say, well, I'm going to use that information to create custom learning plans, or I want to be able to do more detailed forecasting around grades or returns or investments, whatever it may be. You might want to do machine learning or some other technology to further get AI insights to your data. And it doesn't have to be machine learning to do that. There's many ways of getting AI-driven insights from your data. You might want to be able to use that information to be able to identify which students are at greater risk. You might want to be able to socialize that information to stakeholders through visualizations. You might want to build smart apps that connects and plugs into that to empower people within your organization to deliver better outcomes. So another question, I think this is the penultimate one. Do you feel that you have the right tools and architecture to fully maximize the value of your data? Give that a moment. Maybe. Okay, I think that's enough to say, given the last response and this response, there is an opportunity space to be able to explore Microsoft technologies, both from modernization and a data point of view, to improve your posture. And maybe exploiting some of those funding pathways might be a way to be able to mitigate the cost of that change, that improvement. So one of the ways that organizations are adopting data is using what we call a medallion architecture. It's actually a lot more simple than it sounds. You have a lot of data all over the place, on-prem, in the cloud, other people's clouds, SaaS providers, whatever it may be. You connect that data and you bring it in as raw data. This is your skip of data. It can have videos in it, it can have databases in it, it can have files and unstructured data in it. It's your big bucket of data that you're pulling in from relevant data sources. But to make them relevant to your specific objective, you might want to go and start extracting and transforming that data, such as dropping irrelevant bits of data, going through quality controls of that data to ensure the data is of appropriate quality, it's anonymized, and then you may look to move further up the stack where things like you will analyze that data, which results in more data that you will then put in your goal set, or it's additional transformations where you've got data in multiple date formats, for example, and you need to have that consistent. So you build your pipelines to be able to ingest that data, transform that data, and enrich that data so it can then be plugged into other analytics platforms, reporting platforms, into applications, whatever the specific use case is. And this is something that is underpinned quite effectively by Microsoft Fabric, where you can have this common storage platform that will, where your medallion-based storage architecture would exist. So your data effectively evolves into different states of competence at each level of those medallion models. And then with Data Factory, you can connect to a vast variety of data. You can then go and transform your data with Synapse. If you wanted to use machine learning, you could go and do that. If you wanted to visualize your data, you can go and do that, and you can visualize it at different tiers. And then you can also use automations with Data Activator to be able to actually take actions based on the state of your data. And so having that competent platform that allows you to account for the different data types and the controls and the functionality all within one platform. It might be OneLake that underpins that, but it's Microsoft Fabric is the overarching suite that education establishments have access to. So whether you're looking to modernize your data and applications in the cloud, you need a well-defined strategy. I would encourage you to reach out and say, if you've got a specific need and a specific goal, we'll put a plan of action together, and we'll put some costs together and some funding pathways, so you can understand the cost of change, so you can take that back to your business and say, this is what can be done, this is going to be the cost of change, and this will be the outcome that we need. So you'll result in, whether that be more meaningful insights into your data, or whether you're automating business processes, you're delivering more value to your stakeholders, whether they be students or internal stakeholders or other partners. Ultimately, these are components that help you move forward, and that can include the adoption of a broader AI strategy. And as I mentioned earlier on, I'm just going to, this particular slide, someone mentioned Copilot, so I will touch on it maybe in a fraction more detail. We do a workshop because we want to understand what are the goals and the objectives. Just like I've been saying before earlier on in this session, this is, we have crafted this product to align with that same principles, where we understand the needs, the drivers of the business, the objectives, the focus and the vision. Then we do an assessment to understand the state of your infrastructure, or in this particular case, it's Copilot, where we'll understand the state of your tenancies, your policies and controls that you have in place, and how they align to those overall objectives. And then we'll create a report with the remediation activities. So then we can start putting a plan together. So we will go and remediate up these baseline activities. So in the case of Copilot, saying, how much does the head of our organization earn, and having Copilot give you a positive answer is not a good thing. I wouldn't want people to be able to know how much money I earn. So you do things where you tune the data. So within Copilot, there's something called a semantic index. You would tune that index so it doesn't go and ingest data it ought not to, and we can go and deliver that as part of this program. To be able to enable people to be successful in any change, you need to be able to give them the tools to be successful. So in this particular process, again, we provide adoption materials. But again, if you actually look at it more holistically and say, this isn't about Copilot, this is about any modernization project, it's about any data project, having those materials is really important. Having those controls in place to ensure that your data is protected, and having the right licenses available are all important. So the purpose of this slide is not so much to pitch our rapid adoption service for Copilot. It's actually to show that everything I've been describing, like modernization, Copilot is a modernization, but you need a structured approach and you need a concrete plan to go and do it. We structured our own products using that exact same methodology. So I'm going to hand back to Adam now to close us out.
Awesome. Thank you, Leon, for that. We can always rely on you to give a speedy, almost 90-minute presentation. But as Leon said throughout, these slides are available for anybody that would like a copy of these. I think Jess put her email address in the chat box here. on the call, so please do reach out. We can share the slides with you. So it was great to see that kind of what Leon mentioned in that recap slide when we're kind of looking at what it is to have the modern data apps in the cloud plus the well-defined strategy. And then the kind of session 3, which focuses on innovation, kind of looks at what those two things mean together, and then what you can start to do on a more granular level. So in session 3, which you would have had the invites to in your diaries for signing up to the session, Wednesday, 21st of August, we are joined by Victoria Holt, who's our data practice lead, and Leon will be joining us again. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, Leon, he doesn't like to say it, but he is an AI expert. And he only just touched the surface of what he knows about AI in this call. But in that innovation one, we're going to be covering steps 6 and 7 of the Data and AI Roadmap, which is looking at more kind of touching on more data governance, but looking more along the lines of, okay, now you have that data strategy and your apps in the cloud. What can you start to do with your cloud-based data and that insights analysis? And then how you can start to create AI strategies from that and start to implement and build AI apps for your organization. Next slide, please. But in the meantime, you know, after today, if you do want to reach out to us, Jess is your best call to reach out to. If you just want to have a chat about what you'd like to achieve at your organization, whether you want to speak to Leon again or one of the Microsoft specialists on the call that you've heard from today, please do just pop us an email. You've got the QR code there or the email address. We'd love to hear from you. You know, as Leon mentioned, speaking to Jess, it wouldn't be it's not a sales call. We just want to discover what you're trying to achieve, what your challenges are, and what we could possibly do to help you. And then we can kind of have extra funding, talk around extra Microsoft funding that we could help you on your journey as well. So that's it from us for session 2 today. If anyone has any questions, immediate questions, I'm sure Leon wouldn't mind sticking around just for an extra 2 or 3 minutes. If anyone has anything, if you want to come off mute and ask one or pop your hand up or pop it in the Q&A, please let us know. You can do that now. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And as I mentioned, we'd love to hear from you. And hopefully we get to see you in session 3, where we get to talk about all the exciting stuff around data and AI. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.